Picture a wedding in Rome, 38 CE. But don't imagine joy. Don't imagine celebration. Imagine a 14-year-old girl standing at an altar, her face hidden beneath the traditional saffron-colored veil, and across from her, a man who makes her skin crawl. His name is Tiberius Claudius Drusus. He's 50 years old. He drools when he speaks because of a physical disability that affects his mouth. He limps. He stammers. His own family calls him an idiot behind his back, sometimes to his face. He's the embarrassment of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the imperial family that rules the known world. They've kept him alive out of duty, but they've kept him powerless out of shame. And now they're giving him a wife. Her name is Valeria Messalina. She's 14. Beautiful in the way that makes men stare and women jealous. She comes from impeccable bloodline, descended from both Augustus, the first emperor, and Mark Antony, the great general. Her blood is pure aristocratic gold. But her family is politically vulnerable. They need protection. They need connections. And Claudius, pathetic as he is still technically part of the imperial family. He's the nephew of the current emperor, Tiberius. He's harmless. So they trade her, a 14-year-old girl, for political insurance. The ceremony proceeds according to ancient custom. The sacrifice to Jupiter. The joining of hands. The exchange of vows. Messalina speaks the traditional words, Ubi tu Gaius, ego Gaia, where you are Gaius, I am Gaia. It's a formula, meaningless, ancient. But it seals her fate. She belongs to him now. The wedding night. Imagine being Messalina on that first night. You're 14 years old. You've been prepared for this moment by your mother, by older female relatives, by whispered conversations among slaves. You know what's expected. You know what's coming. But knowing doesn't make it easier. Claudius is nervous. More nervous than you are, perhaps. He's never been married before. At 50. He's been the family joke for so long that no one thought to arrange a marriage until now, until the political calculus shifted and someone decided he might be useful after all. He's gentle, as gentle as a 50-year-old man can be with a 14-year-old girl he owns. He's grateful, pathetically grateful, that someone as beautiful as Messalina is now his wife. He tells her this, stammering through the words. And Messalina? She performs. She's been trained for this her entire short life. Aristocratic Roman girls were raised to be wives. To be decorative. To be obedient. To produce heirs and maintain household dignity. So she smiles. She submits. She does what's expected. And somewhere inside her 14-year-old mind, something begins to break. The first year. The marriage is, by Roman standards, functional. Messalina performs her duties. She manages Claudius's household, a relatively small establishment since he's not politically important. She appears at his side at family events, beautiful and silent, exactly as a young wife should be. Claudius is besotted. He's never had anything beautiful before. He's never had anyone look at him without pity or contempt. Messalina's presence in his life feels like a gift, like redemption. He doesn't notice, or chooses not to notice, that when she looks at him, her eyes are empty. Within a year, Messalina is pregnant. She gives birth to a daughter, Claudia Octavia, in 40 C. Then, a year later, a son, Britannicus, named for Claudius's minor military campaigns in Britain. 2 children before she's 17 years old. 2 heirs to connect Claudius to the imperial bloodline through her aristocratic ancestry. She's done her duty. She's secured the family alliance. She's given Claudius what he needed most, legitimacy through offspring. And now she's trapped. Married to a man she despises. Mother to children she didn't choose to have. living in comfortable obscurity while her relatives maneuver through the dangerous waters of imperial politics. She's 17 years old, and her life is already over, or so she thinks. January 24, 41 CE, the world changes. It's late afternoon. Messalina is in Claudius's modest house on the Palatine Hill, probably supervising the household or playing with her infant son. Routine. Boring. Another day in a life that will be the same tomorrow and the day after and every day until she's old. Then the screaming starts. Not from her house, from the palace. The imperial palace, where Emperor Caligula lives with his wife and infant daughter. Soldiers are running through the streets. People are shouting. And then the word spreads, whispered at first, then louder, then shouted from rooftops. The emperor is dead, assassinated, stabbed to death by his own Praetorian guard in an underground passage of the palace. Rome explodes into chaos. The guard is hunting down Caligula's family, his associates, anyone who might seek revenge. They find Caligula's wife, Caesonia, and their infant daughter Julia Drusilla. They kill them both. The baby's head is smashed against a wall. This is the reality of imperial power. It's not glory. It's blood on marble floors and the screaming of murdered children. And in his modest house, Claudius hears the chaos and does what he's always done when danger approaches. He hides. According to the historian Suetonius, the Praetorian guards find him cowering behind a curtain, literally trembling with fear. They drag him out. He begs for his life, stammering apologies, promising he had nothing to do with the assassination. The guards look at him. This pathetic, disabled, stammering old man. The family joke. The one everyone said was too stupid to be dangerous. And they realize he's the last adult male of the Julio-Claudian line. Everyone else is dead or a child. Which means, by default, he's the emperor. They proclaim him on the spot. Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus. The fool becomes a god. And Messalina? She just became Empress of Rome. The transformation. Picture the moment she understands what's happened. She's 17 years old. She's been married for 3 years to a man everyone mocks. She has 2 small children. She's been living in comfortable but unremarkable circumstances, managing a household, performing wifely duties, waiting for life to pass. And suddenly, within hours, everything changes. People who wouldn't have acknowledged her existence yesterday are now bowing. Senators are sending messages requesting audiences. The house is being emptied because they're moving to the imperial palace. Claudius's pathetic household of a few dozen slaves is being replaced by hundreds of servants, administrators, guards. She's not just wealthy now. She's powerful. The most powerful woman in the known world. And Claudius? He's terrified. Completely out of his depth. He never wanted this. He knows he's not qualified. He knows the Senate hates him. They wanted to restore the Republic, not crown another emperor. He knows the Praetorian Guard only proclaimed him because they needed someone, anyone, to justify their own existence. He's an accidental emperor. A placeholder. A joke on the throne. Which means the real power, the actual functional power of deciding who gets access to the emperor, who gets their requests heard, who gets promoted or destroyed, falls to the people around Claudius. His freedmen advisors, Narcissus, Pallas, Callistus. Former slaves who now run the empire's bureaucracy. And his wife. His beautiful, young, underestimated wife. Messalina looks around the imperial palace. She sees the luxury, the marble, the gold, the servants. She sees the power, the ability to make or break careers with a word. She sees the fear in people's eyes when they look at her, afraid to offend the emperor's wife. And for the first time since her wedding night 3 years ago, she feels something other than numbness. She feels hungry. the Senate's contempt. But let's be clear about Messalina's position. Yes, she's Augusta, Empress. Yes, she has unprecedented power for a woman. But she's also 18 years old, female, and married to an emperor the Senate openly despises. The senators, old men who remember the Republic, who hate the autocracy of the emperors, look at Claudius and see weakness. They plot. They scheme. They test how far they can push him. And Claudius, aware of his own inadequacy, tries to prove himself through competence. He actually turns out to be a decent administrator, better than Caligula, anyway, which isn't saying much. He reforms the civil service, improves the grain supply, launches a successful invasion of Britain. But he's still the stammering, limping emperor that no one truly respects. And that makes him paranoid, desperate to eliminate threats before they eliminate him. Enter Messalina. She becomes his eyes and ears, his enforcer, the person who identifies enemies and removes them. And she discovers she's very good at this. She has informants throughout the palace, throughout the aristocracy. Slaves report to her. Freedmen bring her gossip. She learns who's plotting, who's complaining, who poses a threat. And then she acts. A word to Claudius. A suggestion. Did you know Senator X was speaking ill of you? Did you hear what Lady Y said at dinner? Claudius, frightened and isolated, believes her. Orders are given. The Praetorian Guard makes arrests. Messalina is building a machine of political terror. And she's only 18 years old. The mask begins to form. But here's what the ancient sources note, what starts to filter through the gossip networks of Rome. Messalina is behaving strangely. She has everything a woman could want by Roman standards. She's empress. She's wealthy beyond imagination. She has children, status, power. She should be the envy of every woman in the empire. But she seems restless, unsatisfied. There are rumors of affairs, whispers about her spending time with actors, gladiators, men far beneath her station. Claudius, besotted and trusting, doesn't believe the rumors. Or he chooses not to. His freedmen advisors notice, though. They file the information away. Useful, potentially, if she ever becomes a threat to their own power. And Messalina herself? She's discovering something about absolute power that philosophers and tyrants have known forever. When you can have anything, nothing satisfies. When every door is open, there's no thrill in entering. When you're at the absolute peak of society, the only direction left is down. And for a certain type of personality, addictive, compulsive, risk-seeking, that realization is dangerous. Because if the heights bring no pleasure, maybe the depths will. The mask is forming. The Empress by day. And at night, something else. Something Rome will call Lycisca. The she-wolf. But that transformation is still ahead. For now, she's learning to use her power. Learning to destroy her enemies. Learning that she can get away with anything as long as Claudius remains weak and infatuated. The cage is golden. The cage is vast. But it's still a cage. And Messalina is about to discover that the only way to feel free inside a cage is to break every rule that defines it. Let's rewind for a moment. Let's understand the world that created this moment. Because Claudius's rise to power wasn't just unlikely, it was absurd. And the absurdity is crucial to understanding what happens next. The Julio-Claudian bloodbath. Rome's imperial family doesn't just have problems. It's a dynasty built on murder, paranoia, and the systematic elimination of anyone who might pose a threat. Augustus, the first emperor, died in 14C after ruling for 40 years. His succession plan was complicated. He'd adopted Tiberius, his stepson, but only after every other option died. Literally. Augustus's grandsons, his preferred heirs, died young under suspicious circumstances. His daughter Julia, the elder, was exiled. His family tree was pruned by death and disgrace until only Tiberius remained. Tiberius ruled for 23 years, 14 to 37 CE, and spent the last decade on the island of Capri, supposedly engaging in sexual depravities while his henchman Sejanus ran Rome. When Tiberius finally died, possibly smothered with a pillow, he left the empire to his great-nephew Caligula. Caligula started well and ended insane. Or at least, that's how the sources portray him. After 4 years of increasing paranoia, cruelty, and megalomaniacal behavior, declaring himself a living god, making his horse a consul, engaging in incest with his sisters, the Praetorian Guard had enough. On January 24, 41 CE, officers of the guard corner Caligula in an underground passage beneath the palace. They stab him 30 times. His wife Caesonia is killed. Their infant daughter's brains are smashed against a wall. The Julio-Claudian dynasty, founded by Augustus to bring peace and stability to Rome, has become a machine that devours its own children. And now it's about to devour Claudius. Except it doesn't, because something unexpected happens. The last man standing. When the assassination goes down, Claudius is in the palace. He's there because, despite being excluded from real power, he's still technically family. He attends imperial functions, sits through boring ceremonies, exists on the periphery of greatness. When the chaos erupts, Caligula murdered, guards running through corridors, screaming and blood, Claudius's lifelong survival instinct kicks in hide. He finds a curtain or a balcony or some architectural feature, sources disagree on the exact location, and conceals himself. This is what he's always done. Keep your head down. Don't threaten anyone. Survive by being beneath notice. But a soldier, one of the Praetorian guards searching the palace, sees feet beneath the curtain, pulls it aside, finds the 50-year-old Claudius shaking with terror. According to Suetonius, Claudius immediately falls to his knees and begs for his life. He had nothing to do with the assassination. He's loyal. Please don't kill him. The guard stares at him. This pathetic old man, stammering and drooling and trembling. And then the guard realizes something that changes history. Everyone else is dead. The adult males of the imperial family have been systematically eliminated over decades. Tiberius's son Drusus, dead. Germanicus and his sons, dead. Caligula and his potential heirs, just murdered. The bloodline has been winnowed to almost nothing. And Claudius is one of the last branches on the tree. The guard doesn't kill him. Instead, he grabs Claudius's arm and drags him not to an execution block, but to the Praetorian camp. The Praetorian problem. Here's the political calculus the Praetorian Guard faces. They've just killed the emperor. This is treason, punishable by death unless they can justify it. The Senate, theoretically Rome's governing body, has no real power but lots of symbolic authority. If the Senate declares the guards traitors and calls for their execution, there will be civil war. The guards need legitimacy. They need to present their action not as murder but as necessary intervention. And the way to do that is to immediately proclaim a new emperor, someone from the imperial family, someone with the right bloodline, someone who can claim legal succession. But here's the problem. The Senate doesn't want another emperor. Many senators want to restore the Republic, the old system where the Senate governed collectively without an autocrat. They're meeting right now, in this moment of chaos, debating whether to use this crisis to reclaim power. The Praetorian Guard can't allow that. If the Republic is restored, the guards become unnecessary. They lose their privileged position, their inflated salaries, their power. They need an emperor. Any emperor. They look at Claudius. He's perfect. He's weak, pliable, grateful. He'll do what they tell him. He'll pay them generously to ensure their loyalty. And he has the bloodline. he's the brother of Germanicus, uncle of Caligula, grandson of Mark Antony through his mother. So they proclaim him Imperator Caesar Augustus. The emperor, Claudius, still terrified, stammers out questions. Are you sure? Shouldn't the Senate decide? I'm not qualified. They ignore his protests. They parade him to the Senate House. They make it clear, Claudius is emperor, the guards support him, and anyone who disagrees can face the swords of 10,000 soldiers. The Senate, furious but powerless, grudgingly accepts. And just like that, the joke of the family becomes the most powerful man on earth. Claudius the unlikely. Let's be fair to Claudius for a moment. He's not actually stupid, despite what his family believed. He's actually quite intelligent, a historian in fact. He's written books on Etruscan civilization and Carthaginian history. He's read extensively. He speaks Greek fluently. But he has physical disabilities that, in ancient Rome's ableist culture, were equated with mental deficiency. He limps from childhood illness, probably polio. He has a speech impediment. His head sometimes shakes involuntarily. He drools when nervous. His mother, Antonia, called him a monster and used him as an example of human inadequacy. His grandmother Livia considered him an embarrassment. Augustus kept him hidden from public life, fearing he'd bring shame to the family. So Claudius grew up isolated, mocked, excluded from the political and military careers expected of imperial men. He found refuge in scholarship, in books, in staying invisible. And now, at 50, he's emperor. He's sincere about wanting to do a good job. He's not a tyrant by inclination. He actually tries to govern competently. He improves the civil service, replacing nepotism with meritocracy. He expands Roman citizenship to provincials. He invests in infrastructure, aqueducts, harbors, roads. He successfully invades Britain, completing what Julius Caesar started a century earlier. By many measures, he's a better emperor than Caligula, better than Tiberius in his final paranoid years. He's effective, but he's also paranoid. Understandably so. He knows the Senate despises him. He knows his own family considered him worthless. He knows he's emperor only because everyone else is dead. So he's constantly afraid. Afraid of plots. Afraid of assassination. Afraid of being exposed as the fraud he believes himself to be. And this fear makes him dependent on his freedmen advisors who actually run the bureaucracy, on his praetorian prefects who control the troops, and on his wife, his beautiful young wife, who he trusts completely because she's the only person who's ever seemed to love him. Messalina's education in power. Messalina watches all of this unfold. She watches how Claudius is manipulated by his advisors. She watches how the Senate tests him, probing for weakness. She watches how political enemies disappear, arrested on charges of conspiracy, executed, or exiled. And she learns. She learns that in Rome, power isn't about official positions. Women can't be senators or generals or magistrates. But women can whisper in the right ear. Women can gather information. Women can identify threats and eliminate them through proxies. She starts building her own network. She cultivates informants among slaves and freedmen, people invisible to the aristocracy but who see everything, hear everything. She identifies which senators are loyal, which are plotting, which can be bought. And she discovers she has a talent for this. A talent for manipulation. For reading people. For knowing exactly what lever to pull to make someone act as she wants. But there's a problem. A psychological problem that's going to define everything that follows. Messalina is good at acquiring power. But power doesn't make her happy. Success doesn't satisfy her. Winning the game of Roman politics doesn't fill the void inside her. She's 19 years old. She's Empress of the known world. She can have anything, destroy anyone, command legions. And she's profoundly, existentially bored. The first rumors. It starts subtly. Whispers in the palace. Gossip among servants. Messalina is spending time with inappropriate people. Actors. Gladiators. Men far beneath her station. In Rome, actors are barely above slaves in status. They're considered sexually available, morally corrupt, unsuitable for respectable association. Gladiators are even worse. Slaves trained to kill for entertainment, property of their owners, exotic and dangerous. For an empress to associate with such men isn't just unseemly. It's scandalous. But Messalina doesn't care. Or rather, she does care, that's the point. The scandal is the appeal. The danger is the draw. She's discovering something about herself. Normal pleasure doesn't work for her. Luxury is boring. Fine food tastes like nothing. Expensive clothes feel like costumes. The performance of being empress, the ceremonies, the deference, the carefully maintained dignity, is suffocating. But risk? Danger? The possibility of being caught doing something forbidden? That makes her feel alive. Modern psychology would recognize this. It's compulsive risk-taking behavior, often associated with childhood trauma, lack of agency, or environments where normal emotional responses are suppressed. It's the addictive personality seeking stronger and stronger stimuli to feel anything at all. But Rome doesn't have modern psychology. Rome has gossip. And the gossip about Messalina is getting worse. She's sleeping with actors. Multiple actors. She's having them brought to the palace at night. She's not even being discreet. Claudius's freedman advisors notice. They file it away. They don't tell Claudius yet, he's still useful to them, and they don't want to destabilize his already fragile confidence. But they're watching. Waiting. And Messalina? She's escalating. Because the affairs in the palace are becoming routine. Predictable. Safe, in their way. She's empress, she can do what she wants within the palace walls, and who's going to stop her? The thrill is fading. She needs more. Something more dangerous. Something that could actually destroy her if she's caught. She needs to leave the palace. Leave the safety of her imperial identity. Become someone else entirely. She needs to disappear into the city. Into the places where empresses don't go. Into the darkness that respectable women fear. She needs to become Lycisca. But before we follow her into that descent, we need to understand what she's descending from. We need to see the golden cage in all its oppressive splendor. Because you can't appreciate the depths until you've understood the heights. Imagine waking up in the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill. Your bedroom is larger than most Roman houses. The walls are painted with frescoes by master artists, scenes from Greek mythology rendered in colors so vivid they seem alive. The floor is mosaic, each tiny tile placed by craftsmen who spent years perfecting their art. The bed is draped in silk imported from China, so expensive that a single sheet costs more than a laborer earns in a lifetime. You're attended by a dozen personal slaves. They dress you in garments of purple-dyed wool, purple so expensive it's restricted to the imperial family by law. They arrange your hair in the elaborate styles that take hours to achieve. They paint your face with cosmetics from Egypt, kohl for your eyes, crushed pearls for your skin, rouge made from cinnabar. You are Messalina. You are Augusta. You are the most powerful woman in the known world. And you feel absolutely nothing. The palace of everything. Let's tour Messalina's world. Let's understand exactly what she has. The imperial palace complex on the Palatine Hill is not one building but dozens, sprawling across the hill that overlooks the Forum and the Circus Maximus. There are public sections where the emperor receives dignitaries, private family quarters, administrative buildings where hundreds of bureaucrats manage the empire, barracks for the Praetorian Guard. Messalina's personal quarters are a palace within a palace. Multiple rooms, each decorated with obscene luxury. Libraries filled with scrolls. Private baths with heated water and perfumed oils. Gardens with fountains and exotic plants from across the empire. She has slaves for everything. Slaves to bathe her. Slaves to dress her. Slaves to taste her food before she eats it, in case of poison. Slaves to carry messages. Slaves to manage her other slaves. A whole hierarchy of human property existing solely to serve her comfort. She has access to anything money can buy. Jewels from India. Spices from Arabia. Wines from every province. Chefs who prepare delicacies from recipes that have been refined over generations. Dormice stuffed with pork, flamingo tongues, peacock brains. She can commission art, sponsor poets, patronize philosophers. She can attend the theater, the gladiatorial games, the chariot races. She has the best seats, always, because she's Augusta. She can destroy careers with a word. Elevate families with a gesture. A senator who offends her can find himself accused of conspiracy and executed within days. A merchant who pleases her can become wealthy beyond imagination. She is, by any objective measure, living a fantasy. The absolute peak of Roman society. The pinnacle of luxury, power, and privilege. And it's killing her. The performance. Here's what no one outside the palace sees. The suffocating performance required to maintain her position. Every morning, Messalina must present herself as the ideal Roman empress. Dignified. Modest. Devoted to her husband and children. She must attend religious ceremonies, offering sacrifices to the gods while priests drone through ancient rituals. She must receive wives of senators and foreign dignitaries, making polite conversation about nothing. She must appear at Claudius's side during public events, the perfect ornament to his power. Beautiful but not threatening. Gracious but not familiar. Empress but not equal. She must manage the impossible politics of the imperial household. Claudius's freedman advisors, Narcissus, Pallas, Callistus, are former slaves who now run the empire's bureaucracy. They technically serve Claudius, but they actually wield enormous power. Messalina must navigate relationships with them, forming alliances, avoiding conflicts that could undermine her influence. She must watch every word, every gesture, every expression. A casual comment can be interpreted as political intent. A friendship with the wrong person can be seen as conspiracy. Even her clothing choices are scrutinized. Is she dressing too provocatively? Too modestly? Sending hidden messages through her style? And she must do all of this while pretending to be content, grateful, fulfilled by her role as wife and mother and empress. It's exhausting. More than exhausting, it's psychologically destructive. Because Messalina is intelligent. She can see through the performance even as she performs it. She understands that she's a prop in Claudius's reign, valuable for her bloodline and her beauty but not for herself. She knows that if she stopped being useful, she could be discarded, divorced, exiled, even executed. She's living in constant threat while surrounded by luxury. It's a specific kind of torture. The political kills. But Messalina isn't just a passive victim of her circumstances. She's actively participating in the violence that defines imperial power. Remember, Claudius is paranoid and weak. He depends on others to identify threats. And Messalina becomes one of his primary sources of information about conspiracies real or imagined. The pattern is consistent. A senator or aristocrat says something critical of Claudius. Maybe they question his competence. Maybe they make a joke about his stammer. Maybe they just seem too popular, too independent, too much like a potential rival. Word reaches Messalina through her network of informants. She brings it to Claudius, perhaps exaggerating the threat. Did you know Senator X called you an idiot at dinner? Did you hear that Lady Y is spreading rumors about your legitimacy? Claudius, frightened and insecure, believes her. He trusts her. She's his wife, the mother of his children, the only person who's never mocked him. Orders are given. The Praetorian Guard makes arrests. Trials are held, brief, predetermined affairs where the accused has no real defense. Convictions are automatic. The punishments are harsh: execution, exile, property confiscation. Families are destroyed. Fortunes are seized. And Messalina benefits directly. When aristocrats are condemned, their property becomes imperial property, which means Messalina can request it: villas, estates, valuable artwork, money. Claudius, besotted, grants her requests. The case of Valerius Asiaticus. Let's look at a specific example. Valerius Asiaticus was one of Rome's wealthiest and most distinguished senators. He owned the famous gardens of Lucullus, one of the most beautiful estates in Rome, with elaborate landscaping, fountains, pavilions. Messalina wanted those gardens. Just wanted them. Coveted them the way a child covets a toy. So she manufactured a conspiracy. According to Tacitus and Cassius Dio, she had her agents spread rumors that Asiaticus was plotting against Claudius. She claimed he was having an affair with one of Caligula's former mistresses, a connection that could be framed as dangerous nostalgia for the previous regime. The evidence was thin to non-existent. But Claudius was convinced. Asiaticus was arrested, tried, and given the option of suicide rather than execution, a mercy that allowed his family to inherit some of his property. He chose suicide. Opened his veins in the traditional Roman manner. Bled out in his beloved gardens, watching the fountains, surrounded by the beauty that had gotten him killed. And Messalina took possession of the gardens the next day. This wasn't politics. This wasn't defense against genuine threats. This was murder for interior decoration. The psychological profile. So who is Messalina at this point in her life? She's 19, maybe 20 years old. She's been Empress for a year or two. And she's developing a pattern of behavior that ancient sources struggle to explain and modern psychology might recognize as deeply disturbed. She has everything. But everything doesn't satisfy her. Normal pleasures, luxury, comfort, security, leave her empty. Political power is more interesting. The ability to destroy enemies, to watch powerful men beg for mercy, to take what she wants, that provides some stimulation. The ruthlessness is exciting in its way. But it's not enough. Because even political violence becomes routine. Even murder becomes boring when you can order it as easily as ordering dinner. She needs more. Needs different. Needs something that actually carries risk, actual danger of consequences. And she finds it in sex. Not sex with her husband. That's duty, performance, required reproduction. Not even sex with high-status lovers in the palace. That's still within the bounds of power, still protected by her position. She needs sex that degrades her. Sex that reduces her from Augusta to just another body. Sex that could destroy her if discovered. She needs to stop being Messalina and become someone else. Someone with no power, no protection, no identity except flesh for sale. She needs to become Lycisca. The descent begins. The first time is probably not planned. Not a calculated decision. More like an impulse she acts on before she can think better of it. Maybe it starts with an actor. Actors in Rome are low status, considered sexually available, exotic and exciting to aristocratic women precisely because they're forbidden. Messalina has an affair with an actor, maybe several. They meet in the palace at night, in rooms where servants are dismissed. But the thrill fades quickly. It's too safe. She's still in the palace, still protected, still Augusta even in her transgression. So she escalates. She starts leaving the palace. Disguised, probably a cloak, a wig, concealing her identity. She meets her lovers in places outside imperial control. A wealthy patron's house, perhaps. A garden. Somewhere she could theoretically be caught. The risk is intoxicating. The fear of discovery makes her feel alive in a way that all the luxury and power never could. And then she goes further. Maybe someone tells her about the brothels in the Suburra, Rome's slum district, the neighborhood of workshops and tenements and crime. Places where aristocrats don't go. Places that are dirty, dangerous, real in a way the marble palaces are not. And Messalina thinks, what if? What if she didn't just visit the Suburra as a wealthy patron slumming? What if she went as a worker? What if she offered herself like the common prostitutes do, selling her body to strangers for a few coins? What if she disappeared completely into that world, shedding her imperial identity, becoming anonymous flesh in a dirty room? The idea should horrify her. It does horrify part of her. She's Empress. This is beneath her. This is degradation beyond imagining. But that's exactly why it's irresistible. Because in degradation, finally she might feel something real. Night falls over Rome. The respectable people retire to their homes, bolt their doors, leave the streets to those who have business in darkness, thieves, drunkards, prostitutes, the desperate and the damned. And on the Palatine Hill, in the imperial palace, a woman is transforming. She removes the jewelry first. The rings, the bracelets, the necklace, all marked with imperial insignia, all worth fortunes, all identifiable. She hides them in a chest that locks. No servants are present. She's dismissed them all, sent them away with orders not to return until morning. Then the clothes. The purple-dyed stola that marks her as Augusta. The fine undergarments. The elaborate hairstyle that took hours to construct. She undoes it all, stripping herself of every marker of status. She wraps herself in common wool. Rough stuff the kind servants wear. A dark cloak with a hood. And then, the final touch, a blonde wig. Her natural hair is dark. The wig is cheap, obvious, the kind worn by prostitutes trying to look exotic. She examines herself in a polished bronze mirror. The Empress is gone. In her place, a common woman. Pretty, yes, but not unusually so. Nothing to mark her as anyone important. She opens a side door of the palace, one used by servants, not watched as carefully as the main entrances. Steps out into the night, and Lycisca is born. The Suburra after dark. To understand what Messalina is walking into, you need to understand the Suburra. It's Rome's most densely packed neighborhood, wedged into the valley between the Esquiline and Viminal hills. During the day, it's a chaotic hive of workshops, markets, tenements stacked 6 or 7 stories high, narrow streets that never see direct sunlight. At night, it's something else. Dangerous. Lawless. The Vigiles, Rome's fire brigade and night watch, patrol occasionally, but large sections of the Suburra are effectively ungoverned after dark. This is where the poor live, stacked in crowded apartments with no running water, no sanitation, constant risk of fire or building collapse. This is where workshops produce goods for the wealthy, leather workers, metal workers, weavers. This is where taverns serve cheap wine to laborers trying to forget their circumstances. And this is where prostitution thrives. Not the high-class courtesans who entertain aristocrats. Not the elegant meretresses with cultured conversation and expensive perfume. This is transactional sex for the masses. Quick, cheap, functional. The brothels, lupinaria, literally wolf dens, are cramped buildings with tiny rooms. Each room has a stone bed, a thin mattress, maybe a basin for washing. The doors have curtains instead of proper doors. The walls are thin enough that you hear everything from adjacent rooms. The women who work here are mostly slaves owned by the brothel keeper, or freed women so poor they have no other options. They service sailors from Ostia, soldiers on leave, laborers, merchants, whoever has a few coins. It smells like sweat, cheap wine, sex, and the human waste that flows through open sewers in the streets outside. It's loud, laughter, arguments, the sounds of bodies in mechanical congress. This is where Messalina chooses to go. The first night. Picture her walking through the Subura's narrow streets. Her hood is up, concealing her face. She's nervous, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. Every shadow could hide danger. She could be robbed, assaulted, killed. No one knows where she is. No guards protect her. She's as vulnerable as any common woman in Rome's worst neighborhood. And that vulnerability is exactly what she's seeking. She finds a brothel, maybe one she's scouted before, or maybe she just picks one at random. A cramped building with a sign outside. A painted phallus, the universal symbol. Crude but effective advertising. The Leno, the brothel keeper, is a man in his 40s, Greek probably, running this business like any other commercial enterprise. He looks her over when she enters. Sees a young woman, blonde wig, decent looking. Could make him money. Looking for work? He asks. Messalina, no, Lycisca now, nods. You worked before? She lies. Says yes. She's done this in other cities, needs money now that she's in Rome. He accepts the story. Why wouldn't he? Women drift into and out of prostitution all the time in Rome. Economic necessity drives thousands into the trade. One more blonde girl is unremarkable. He shows her to a room. Number 7, let's say. A cell, really, barely larger than a closet. Stone bed with a thin, stained mattress. A small oil lamp. Graffiti scratched into the walls. Names, crude drawings, prices. The rate is 1 as per customer, he tells her. I take half. Any problems, you call for me. 1 is. The smallest Roman coin. What a loaf of bread costs. This is bottom-tier prostitution. Lycisca agrees. Sits on the bed. Waits. The customers. They come. One after another. Men who've been drinking, who have a few coins, who want a few minutes of release before returning to their crowded tenements or barracks. A sailor from Ostia, salt-stained and drunk. He grunts through the transaction, pays his as, leaves. A laborer with calloused hands and wine-sour breath. Quick, mechanical. He doesn't even look at her face. A soldier, young, nervous. His first time in a brothel, maybe. He finishes quickly, embarrassed. A merchant, older, rough. He slaps her once, casually, the way you'd hit a slave who moved too slow. She doesn't react. This is what she came for, to be treated as object, as property, as nothing. This continues for hours. The lamp burns down. The mattress grows more unpleasant. Her body aches. She's exhausted, degraded, used. And somewhere in that exhaustion, that degradation, she feels alive. This is real in a way the palace never is. These men don't care who she is. They don't defer to her, don't beg for her favor, don't fear her power. They use her body and leave. She's invisible to them except as function. It's the complete opposite of being Augusta. And that's exactly the point. The psychology of degradation. Let's pause here. Let's try to understand what's happening in Messalina's mind. Because the ancient sources present this as simple nymphomania, insatiable sexual appetite, uncontrollable lust. But that's not what this is. Messalina isn't in the Subura because sex feels good. The physical pleasure is minimal to non-existent. Brothel sex is transactional, quick, often uncomfortable or painful. This isn't about orgasm. It's about control through loss of control. It's about power through powerlessness. In the palace, Messalina has absolute power. She can destroy senators with a word. Men fear her. Servants obey her every command. She's untouchable, elevated, protected. But that power is suffocating. It requires constant performance, constant vigilance. She can never relax, never be vulnerable, never show weakness. The mask of Augusta must be perfect at all times. In the brothel, she has no power at all. She's just another prostitute. Men use her body without asking permission, without caring about her comfort. She's property, briefly rented. And in that powerlessness, paradoxically, she finds a kind of freedom. Freedom from performance. Freedom from the burden of being important. Freedom to be nothing. Modern psychology recognizes this pattern in people who experience trauma or overwhelming stress. The need to escape into experiences where normal identity dissolves, where the self disappears into pure physicality. It's dissociative. It's compulsive. It's profoundly unhealthy. But it's also understandable. When your normal life is unbearable, when the performance of being yourself is exhausting, sometimes the only relief is to become someone else entirely. Someone with no history, no expectations, no identity beyond body. Lycisca is that escape. The she-wolf who prowls Rome's underworld, anonymous and free in her degradation. The pattern establishes. That first night doesn't end with revelation or catharsis. It ends with exhaustion. Eventually the brothel keeper tells her the night's work is done. It's nearly dawn, the customers have stopped coming. She collects her share of the coins. A handful of small bronze coins, worth almost nothing. She could buy a few loaves of bread with this. She, who owns estates worth millions of sesterces, is counting asses like a common worker. The absurdity makes her laugh. A bitter, exhausted laugh. She stumbles back through the Subura as the sun rises. The streets are different now, bakers opening their shops, merchants setting up stalls, the city waking to legitimate business. She keeps her hood up, exhausted, reeking of the brothel. Back to the palace through the servants' entrance. To her chambers. She dismisses the wig, bathes in perfumed water that can't quite wash away the smell of the night. Dresses in imperial purple. Arranges her hair in the style befitting Augusta. By mid-morning, she's receiving the wives of senators, making polite conversation, playing the perfect empress. And that night she does it again. Not immediately. Maybe she waits a few days. But the pull is irresistible. The palace suffocates her. The performance exhausts her. She needs the escape of Lycisca. A pattern establishes itself. Maybe 2 or 3 nights a week. Maybe more. She returns to the same brothel. The keeper recognizes her now as the blonde girl, a regular worker. Good earnings doesn't cause trouble. Other prostitutes work alongside her in adjacent cells. They don't know who she really is. How could they? They see a woman who seems educated for a prostitute, who speaks refined Latin, but plenty of freed women and even fallen aristocrats end up in brothels. It's not that unusual. The customers certainly don't recognize her. They've seen the Empress at public events, distant and elevated on viewing platforms. The woman in cell 7, blonde wig slightly askew, mattress stained, smelling of sex and cheap wine, she's not even in the same category of being. And Messalina, Lycisca, services them all. Sailor, soldier, labor, merchant. One is each. The Empress of Rome earning the price of bread, one customer at a time. The name. Lycisca. The she-wolf. It's not random. The wolf is Rome's sacred animal. The legend says Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, twin brothers nursed by a she-wolf after being abandoned. The she-wolf is the symbol of Roman origin, of the city's destiny. But lupa, in Latin, also means prostitute. There's a deliberate pun in the legend. The she-wolf that nursed Rome's founders worked in a brothel. Romans knew this. They joked about it. So when Messalina chooses the name Lycisca for her prostitute persona, she's making a statement. She's the she-wolf of Rome. The Empress and the whore. The sacred and the profane merged into one body. It's blasphemy, of course. Deliberate desecration of Rome's founding myth. Taking the sacred symbol and dragging it through the literal gutter. And that's the point. Everything about Lycisca is about degradation, about destroying the sacred elevation of Augusta through deliberate debasement. The worse it gets, the more it satisfies something broken inside her.